or might have something, but it'll be not because of you. Sometimes the weirdest setbacks, the weirdest obstacles, the weirdest chance meetings, the weirdest all sorts of things suddenly result in something that was not on the agenda, wasn't on the horizon, wasn't on the, forget the medium term, it wasn't on the long term maybe. And it just happens. And the openness to embrace new stuff and the openness to acknowledge that you know precious little about anything.
Yeah.
And a curiosity about life and a curiosity about people and a curiosity about everything, particularly now with AI and everything happening so fast, so quickly. Exciting times we live in.
Well, you're saying lots of things here that I want to tap into, but let's...
Please don't make a note.
Just on that serendipity point, there's a guy, Nassim Taleb, I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but he talks about antifragility, which I've bored people about on this podcast and others. But one example he gives is going to networking events, which you wouldn't think from a millionaire trader, but he gives in his book an example where, what are the downsides? You lose an evening, right? And you go home. And you're probably going to, 98% of the time, going to an event that you don't know anyone and meeting people you don't know will probably be a complete waste of time. But the downside can be measured as pretty small. You lose an evening. Mm-hmm. The upside is asymmetric, because you could meet a spouse or in 10 years' time a business partner or a client, and you've got to expose yourself to your point. And on the final point you made about curiosity, this is the one thing that I think the world is severely lacking. The foundational kind of quality in a person, curiosity, and generosity is the other one that together can. But do you think curiosity is innate, or do you think that can be taught? I know you've said happiness is a skill before. I've picked up on that, and that is a skill or a muscle that you can train. Is it the same for curiosity, do you think? Or people...
Can you hold all of those thoughts while I just talk about networking for a second?
Okay, yeah, all right. So talk about this networking.
Okay, so the networking and opening yourself up to lots of opportunities, I agree with. I also agree with extreme focus and saying no to a lot of stuff, which is confusing, but that's me. I went to a networking event about 12 years ago, and it was at a big law firm, and I couldn't be asked on the day. I didn't want to. I'd registered for it. I'd paid, it was a thing. I wasn't flush at the time, and I went out of duty to myself. But my heart wasn't in it. My mood wasn't in it. And instead of everybody else was bubbly and effervescent and happy and enthusiastic, and I was the exact opposite of all of those adjectives. I was the exact opposite, and I went and sulked by the beer. Got a bottle of beer, and this other guy got a bottle of beer, and he had as much enthusiasm as I did for this thing, and we basically spurned the rest and talked for 2 hours. Without him being there, I'd have gone in 15 minutes, because then I could have justified to myself that I'd been and it wasn't for me, and I'd at least made the effort. Not much effort, but I'd made an effort. And I spoke to him for a couple of hours. During those 2 hours, we didn't talk about work. We didn't ask what each other did. We talked about random stuff. We mocked the people who were networking. We didn't even ask each other's names. Anyway, 2 hours later, this guy and I, it's time to go. We both called Peter, and off we go. We connect on LinkedIn. A month later, if I'd been working for somebody, the next morning my boss would have said, how many people did you meet last night? How many business cards did you get? How many this and that did you get? Was it a waste of my time? I'm not paying that expenses to get you there to meet one person. So I'd have failed in the productivity test. But it was a quality connection, I thought. Anyway, we connected on LinkedIn, didn't meet up. 2 years later, I don't think we even did the sort of fake happy birthday thing that LinkedIn tells you to tell. We didn't even do that. 2 years later, his PA sends me a message saying, Peter's going overseas to the Middle East. I go, okay. Well, we had a good 2 hours.
Yeah.
2 years later, he says, I'm in London, do you want to grab a beer? We haven't had a beer for 4 years, 6 years, or whatever it was. Grab a beer. He's got a friend, a colleague with him. And I end up being part of a major football deal. I was a tiny player, but I helped keep this deal on the tracks. And I made some money, and it was a connection, and I'm still in contact with him 15 years later.
Yeah.
And whereas if you go to a network thing and you come back with a collection of cards, which is, hi, I mean, they're just pitching or selling olive oil, or doing a short-term hustle. So serendipity and being real.
Yes.
Being real is if I could open an authenticity shop, I'd have thousands of aspiring politicians as customers.
Thank you for watching this clip from the Meeting People podcast. To watch the full episode, visit the description or click on this link.